Hey everyone, today we're joined by Yuewei Zhang, the mastermind behind Project Mix, perhaps one of the most highly anticipated VR games currently in the market. So, hello Yuewei. First of all, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got your game development related skills?
Yeah, sure. I've been developing games for quite a while, like since my teens. I actually started making games on Roblox, so it's a bit of a completely unrelated to what I'm doing now. But I've been making games on Roblox since I was like 12 or 13, and then I pivoted to using Unity, and I discovered the world of VR gaming because my high school teacher actually bought an HTC Vive back in 2016, and then the moment I got my hands on the device, trying it out, I just knew I want to make VR games for as long as I can. Like basically, like it's gonna be my thing.
I have to ask, why VR in particular? Because usually VR is seen by many as like a useless gimmick, and for you, I can see that VR is something more than that. So, why VR?
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of reasons, and the thing that really um excites me about VR is the added immersion. I've always had a imaginative mind, and I like one of the things I love most about video games or really good movies is the escapism aspect. The being able to dive into a different world to experience being someone else, and I think VR just enhances that and really accentuates that. But of course, it depends on how it's done. If it's not done very well, like some of the early VR games, then it will just feel like a gimmick. It's like, what's the point? But I think it's definitely uh, the way it adds to the escapism, the and the immersion that really draws me to VR. And the other whole thing behind it is I'm not sure if this is like a super related reason, but I grew up reading a lot about retro like games from the 80s and 90s, like game companies like id Software and Square Enix and just a lot. I've always been really inspired by those companies. I wished I could have been there at the time. Unfortunately, I was born a bit too late for that. But then for VR gaming, it feels like it's my chance to make a mark on it because it's still pretty new and there's lots of chance to pioneer.
And so, about this living a mark thing. So, are you planning to live a mark with Project Mix, or do you see Project Mix like as a stepping stone to something bigger?
Yes, definitely Project Mix is a stepping stone to something bigger. Like my my whole thing the whole thing with VR, I feel right now, is that a lot of games just feel like tech demos, as in they have a really cool mechanic, but it's more about showing the mechanic than like a uh like some of my favorite games combine like narrative mechanics and philosophy in this really uh awesome way. I think that's like the way games have evolved. Because if you think about it, in the really early stages of gaming, it was basically just like at the arcades, it was just about chasing high scores. It was more about reaction time. But then over time, games have become much more than that. And I think like VR still has to go through that stage. A lot of games still feel like it's just like a arcade game or like a tech demo for a mechanic. There hasn't been many games that have taken it to the next level as we can see in non VR gaming. So that's what I'm aiming for.
And in your opinion, what games would you say have taken it to the next level?
For VR or non VR games,
You can do both.
I need to think. I don't know if I can think of many at the top of my head, but some of the game developers I really look up to include Yoko Taro. The way he approaches game design is amazing, and I think because he this is not to say that every game should be designed this way, but he uses game mechanics as a way to serve some sort of bigger philosophical or story purpose, and I think that's really cool. But it's also not the games he designs are also not just for the sake of being artsy, or like they also really fun themselves. Like Nier Automata, for example, is a lot deeper than it seems, but you can also just enjoy it like an action game. So I really enjoy games that are like that.
Could you please tell us a bit about Plectrum? How many people are there on your team, or are you a solo developer? Uh, and how do you, if you have a team behind you, so how do you interact with them and share responsibilities?
Plectrum is mostly a team of three, and we are based in New Zealand. And it's not really like your typical kind of team. We actually started back in high school, and then it was just a matter of it was just kind of it started off as just developing games for fun, but then we started getting interested in taking it further. I basically do a whole lot of things. I'm the game director. I handle the production. I work on the game design, the programming, the writing, the marketing, the community management. So I do a lot of the high level stuff. And we have a 3D artist who basically uh, handles like a beast of things. Like he does all the 3D visuals, the animations, like from the environments to the characters to the props. And then we have a 2D artist that helps us with the character designs and the key arts. So we're a very small team, but we have most of the visual. We have most of the aspects handled to make like a really good demo. Obviously, to make a full game, we do need to expand the team a bit more, and we also have uh, we also have two composers working on the game overseas.
All right, thank you. So let's finally move on to the main dish, Project Mix. First of all, could you please tell me what influenced your vision the most? Because you've mentioned Nier Automata, and I think there are some certain similarities in terms of this cyberpunk aesthetic and uh, maybe character design.
I have a lot of influences, but to go back to Nier Automata, it's how I really like games that it's a preference thing, but I really like the games where it's more than just mechanics. Like the mechanics serve a deeper purpose, and actually that's kind of also the thing I don't like about VR gaming the most. It feels like a lot of the games they're just about performing a task. Like maybe there's a job simulator about serving burgers, and then all you do is serve burgers. But I really so that's basically the what I want to make a departure from and make a difference. So obviously in Project Mix, it's got a lot of there's a lot of bartending aspects to it. So you make drinks and you serve them to customers, but I also don't want to make that feel like that's the point, like doing the task itself. It's more like the mechanic serves something greater than that, and that is to form connections with these characters, and that's something that's really missing in VR is like that kind of high purpose. It's to form a connection of these characters, and also for these narrative reasons, to serve a narrative purpose. And in terms of that, that would be related to my how I'm inspired by a lot of Japanese role playing games. So obviously, Nier Automata is one of them, but games like Final Fantasy VII and Persona. So for those kind of games, it's highly character driven. So it's not just about kind of going on an adventure to save the world. It's going on an adventure to save the world with your friends and the people you met. So yeah.
Yeah, and now that you've mentioned the main bartending mechanics, I'm always reminded of this quote by Gabe Newell. I don't remember it verbatim, but it was something like, "Why make games realistic? They should be fun, and realism is not as important." But I also realized that some of the players of Project Mix will be bartenders in real life. Maybe one or two, but there will be some, and they'll get very picky. So my question is, how do you plan to ensure that this bartending experience feels as authentic as possible?
That one's definitely a bit tricky. So, for in terms of the like on several levels. So some mechanics are just very hard to adapt over into VR, because VR indeed does lack that sort of nuanced and fine-tuned physicality. So definitely some of the mechanics have to be adjusted or simplified to feel good in VR. The way we've been approaching the bartending is we do talk to a lot of bartenders. Obviously, like there are a few people that are actual bartenders in real life, and they give us a lot of feedback. And we've also been looking at a lot of videos online. Like the kind of the aspect that we're really trying to nail is less about the realism, but more about the sort of the romantic idea behind the bartending and all the mechanics that have been made for Project Mix. They don't necessarily follow real life physics, but it feels cool and it feels smooth. So those are the two main aspects.
And besides bartending, what other gameplay mechanics are there?
One of the biggest parts of the game is that really we want to emphasize that daily cycle feeling. It's like when you play Persona, there's like every there's like a daily cycle of routines that you go through, and then this drives the story forward. So Project Mix at its core is a visual novel, but it's supported by different activities that you can do. Like for example, after work, you'll be able to hang out with characters that you met in the bar or kind of on the way to the bar. You'll be able to kind of like there's a lot of mechanics that are designed for immersion, but overall the game is focused on the evolving narrative aspect and the relationship building between the characters.
Speaking of characters, could you please tell us a little bit about them? So, how many are there important characters in Project Mix? And I'm sure many would love to hear if it's possible to romance them.
So for the characters, there's definitely going to be a lot, and there's still a lot of them in the works. That's why we haven't shown them. But what's like, as you know, we've released a demo recently, and I think there were around like 5 characters. But I think overall in the full game, there's going to be like 20 to 25 characters. Not all of them will be characters you meet in the bar. Like some of them might be random characters you meet on the street or when you go into the store, or maybe some people outside your apartment. So there'll be a lot of characters, and they will come from all walks of life. So you get to meet like a taxi driver, a convenience store clerk, maybe like a triad member, those sort of things. And in terms of the romancing, there's this kind of an interesting one. So in the old school visual novels like Fate Stay Night, they're actually more complicated than like today's dating simulators. It's like they every romantic option goes into a completely different narrative route, which leads to like a completely different story and ending. And basically that's kind of, but then in something like Persona 5, for example, when you romance the characters, it doesn't really change the story. So I'm sort of trying to bridge the two. So there'll be characters where if you kind of romance them, it will completely change the course of the story. But then there'll also be characters that you can build a relationship and romance, but then it won't affect the story as much.
On a more technical side of things, what 3D tools do you use for like modeling, texturing, rendering?
For our 3D artist uses Cinema 4D for the 3D modeling and uses Substance Painter for the texturing. And for the textures, we basically just rely on a lot of hand texturing because we really want to get that anime look. And it's a lot of the to achieve the anime look, a lot of it is really just in the art of hand painting the textures. So that's overall what we're trying to refine and get looking right.
And while staying on this topic, so is Project Mix powered by Unity?
Yeah, it's using the Unity game engine.
How good would you tell Unity Engine is when it comes to VR development in particular?
For VR development in particular is really good because a lot of the VR companies they kind of design for Unity first. It's actually kind of a sad thing because I think it should be equal support for both Unity and Unreal Engine. But yeah, for example, when Meta releases a new feature, usually is more stable for uh, Unity in particular. So it's been pretty smooth. The thing with VR development is there's a lot of different ways to approach it. Like these different frameworks and libraries and uh, plugins. You can do it in a whole lot of ways, and there is like a recommended way. Like there is like a Unity way to do it. They have this XR interaction toolkit, and before I think like back in 2020, it was very hard to use, and there weren't any examples and but then in recent years, they have been providing a lot more sample scenes, so it's a lot easier to get started and it's not so confusing. But I don't actually use that. I'm a bit old school. As I said, I started making VR games back in 2016, so there weren't any frameworks or like interaction toolkits you could use. So you just wrote everything from scratch, and that's still what I do today. It's kind of like a bad thing, but it's also a good thing because it allows me to um, make the interactions work exactly the way I want.
My next question pertains to, once again, your Kickstarter campaign. Should the campaign reach the 300,000 goal, how fast would you be able to produce the PC and or console version of Project Mix?
So for that one, we basically it's going to be very hard for us to develop both the VR and non-VR version in parallel. So we would have to develop it after the VR release. So it depends on how long that takes. And I think and basically I'm aiming and scoping for it to be released end of 2026, the VR version. And the non-VR version is we only want to develop the non-VR version once all the like the story and the content and everything settled, because essentially the non-VR version is like the VR version, but all the controls, the way the story, camera angles are presented are completely remade, and there'll be lots of new things. So for that, we're aiming for it to be released around like half a year later because we can reuse a lot of the same assets and we don't have to worry about the it's just more about the way the game's presented.
So around mid 2027, should
Yes.
300,000. Wow.
Yes.
I'll have to make sure that the Kickstarter link is added to this video's description.
Yep. Sorry about my answers, by the way. I'm not very good at interviews. I sometimes I get brain freeze. If
No,
there's
no,
some
no,
questions
no.
you think,
It's absolutely fine because I'm sure you know that 80 level doesn't really specialize in spoken interviews. We usually conduct them in written form, but
right?
we decided to, well, experiment a bit. So hence this interview.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for giving me the chance and also the opportunity. Yeah, I don't usually do this kind of thing. So if you ask me to write in text form, it's like, oh, it's a piece of cake. But then when you ask me to say these things, I have to sort of jog my head and try to fight the brain freeze going on. So, like, obviously, if you ask me what my inspirations are, it's not just Neo Automata, but then I have like a brain freeze and I don't know, I kind of like forget. That's kind of the problem.
No, I don't really see it as a problem because, well, we're all people.
All right. Thank you.
Now that I've mentioned people, I had this one question I really wanted to ask you. I'm aware that you have some experience with artificial intelligence tools like image generators and whatnot, and I'm sure you know that in general, the community's opinion on AI is, well, mixed to negative, to say the least. So my
Yep.
question, should we be worried that Project Mix would have AI generated assets and all the different generated slop?
Oh, right. So for this one, it's an interesting one. It's I like it may not be the answer people want to hear. But yeah, we don't want to use any AI generated content for like it's like I'm not gonna exactly okay. It gets the reason we don't want to use any AI generated art or content in the final game is because we really want that very hand tailored, hand painted, handmade feeling. We want to make it so that it feels like every single piece of the game has been touched by a human. That's the idea. But so definitely none of it will show up in the final work. But obviously, the value in AI tools, I think, is how fast it is to come up with ideas. Obviously, the ideas won't be good; they're not going to be refined. That requires the work of a human artist to get those details right. But I wish I can come up with an example. But yeah, it's if we are to use any AI tools, it will just be more for exploring an idea quickly, not to be used as a final asset in the game. That's definitely not, especially since we're going for that anime art style, and um, that one just requires a lot of manual work. Just yeah.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is that there won't be anything like that in the final version. And as long as it remains in the development pipeline and is not shown to the actual players.
Yeah, I think AI is great as a what if tool. So it's like, what if, I don't know, like the building I designed was medieval looking, or like what if it was in a specific style, that sort of thing. But obviously it can't actually do the work for you. It's just more of a tool to it's like a quick and dirty tool to imagine something in your brain. But it's not really that great for making any final assets.
Now that we've touched on AI, which is, I think, is one of the main issues with game development right now. Not issues necessarily, but the most debated topics.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, from your perspective as an indie developer, what would you say are the main issues with the gaming industry as a whole right now?
Well, honestly, there are a lot of issues. It's like this, in particular, the VR gaming industry has a lot of problems, but obviously, there's some overlapping problems in the wider uh, game development industry. And some of these things I'm frustrated about is also what is making me decide to start my own studio. Where should we start? There's a lot, basically. I think one of the things that's letting down game development, especially like in AAA, is the desire, the focus on de-risking. So today, making games is less about exploring cool ideas and more about how do you de-risk. How do you make like the least riskiest project that makes the most amount of money with the least amount of money invested? And then if you do something like that, the creativity, uh, the what makes like a game innovative and fun and uh, basically historical, a lot of that's lost. And that's definitely a really frustrating thing about AAA games. But that is kind of just like a general problem as well. That's why a lot of indie game developers find it hard to get funding and find a publisher, because a lot of the it's one of the things about the game industry is it's still pretty new, but uh, it's been going on for long enough that there has been a history, and then with history, there are like certain trends. There, people know kind of what works and what doesn't work. But the problem with that is uh, there's this desire to just stick with what worked rather than try to do something new. So, so definitely that sort of emphasis and focus on de-risking and the lack of and how difficult it is to find funding if you try to do something different. That's some of the biggest problems I see. So that's why, yeah, indies are really cool, and the AAA's industry isn't like what it used to be.
And would you agree that in this day and age, AA studios and indie developers are more respected than AAAs? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely on the internet, it's the really sad thing. I really admire AA studios. It's I mean, before a studio became a lot of the AAA studios of today, they like back in the 90s, they would have made like their stuff felt more like AA, and then it kind of changed over time. The sad thing is, it is from what I've seen, it's hard to it's hard for AA studios to survive because they're sort of in like an awkward zone where, like for example, investors, they when they invest a certain amount of money, they want to get like a lot back. But then AA games and studios, while they are really well respected, they don't. It's hard for them to continue getting funding, and then that's kind of they kind of turn into these like kind of cult classic kind of status.
So, and one last question we always ask of everyone. What would be your advice to beginners and aspiring developers fresh out of, I don't know, college or an online course? What would be your advice to those who want to get into the industry right now?
I think the most important thing that you can't replace is definitely just get into it and make a game, and then not just make a game, put it out there, get feedback, and obviously it's gonna be, I would say, just seek the things that are not very comfortable overall. Like for example, maybe you made a game, but then you don't really want to show it off because you're afraid of the harsh feedback, or maybe you're afraid that no one's gonna see it. Like you got to do it basically. So I think if you're starting out, the most it's kind of a funny one. Like it works for me. It's like I just try to think about what I don't want to do, and usually those things I don't want to do are what leads me to grow and then uh, get more experience and become more knowledgeable. For me, I don't have a degree in game design. I actually self-learned most of the things in game development. Like you're not gonna learn a lot of the things you really need as an indie game developer. Like how do you sell your game? How do you market it effectively on social media? How do you make it fun? Like a lot of these skills you can really only learn from doing, and also from just studying how other people did it. It's so yeah, it's really important to do the thing. And oh yeah, the last piece of advice that has really helped me is when you're starting out, find a role model. That's like one of the things that has been most effective for me. Find someone or game that you really admire, that really motivates you, like the kind of game that's like you play it and it's like, oh damn, I wish I could make something like this. That becomes basically your guiding light when things are really hard. It's like when you don't know what to do. You can look at this role model, maybe this person or this game, and then it kind of makes you realize like what's possible, and also it gives you something to study, because it's like a lot of things don't seem possible until you have see someone else has done it, and that's why the role model is really important.